The Baltimore Ravens 2023 draft is officially complete. We talk about the entirety of the Ravens 6-person draft class, also get into what they ended up doing on day 3, get into the big trade and also the picks that they made. We'll also talk about the Ravens undrafted free agency class as it stands right now and look at just what it means for the team moving forward and what they could do to continue to improve their roster post-draft. All that and more here on an instant reaction episode of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another episode of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you as always on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight and making us your first listen of the day or the night, each and every day /night. We're free and available all podcasting platforms here, including over in video form on YouTube, so you can subscribe for free, both in video form as well as in audio form. No money involved here. In today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. If you've ever dreamed of becoming an NFL general manager and managing a football franchise, this game is definitely for you. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. Our listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On in all caps in the game. And we're here 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, the Ravens 2023 draft officially in the books. And I think that there's a lot to be excited about here. I'm going to be talking a lot of things here. It's an instant reaction. I'm going to be giving you my first reactions to everything that happened on day 3. We'll recap what happened on days 1 and 2, obviously. We'll talk Lamar. We'll talk Zay Flowers. So a lot of stuff to dive into. I appreciate you tuning in here on a Saturday night. You know, you could be out on a date. You could be partying, going to see a movie. I'm watching the Nuggets game. So we'll wrap up probably around 8:30 or by 8:30 here. If you're listening post, that's where I got to be. We might go a little over. But I really appreciate you being here, choosing to listen to me here on Locked On Ravens. We are a 5-day-a-week Ravens podcast, so Ravens news, analysis, updates. If you're an everydayer, you know this stuff already, but I got to put it out there for the new listeners here. Again, you can subscribe. We are a YouTube show. We're also an audio form show. It's the same show, both audio and video. So if you have a Ravens friend or a family member that likes the team, be sure to throw them over here our way on Locked On Ravens. And these live episodes, they really give us the opportunity to, I think, engage with the chat a lot. We have Charles Henshaw in the chat saying, what's up, Charles? Dollhouse checking in here saying, yes, sir. Kenneth Peller coming in, what's up, Kevin? What's up, Kenneth? I appreciate you being here. Dollhouse saying, hey, Kevo. Hey, Kevo's a name I actually had as a childhood nickname of mine, so Kevo, I'm used to that. So shout out to you, Dollhouse. We got Felix in here saying, I can't wait for the season to start. I think a lot of people feel that way, Felix, myself included. I'm really excited about this year for them. Kenneth said, but it's going to be raining again, so it's into tomorrow morning. Yeah, and then Joe Hare saying, hey, yo, what's up, Joe? Appreciate you tuning in here. So we'll continue engaging with the chat throughout the course of this thing, but let's get into day 3. Let's talk day 3 for the Ravens. Coming in, they had 3 picks. They ended up making 4. So we'll get into the kind of the drama that unfolded surrounding Baltimore's draft there. But let's first start off here. In the 4th round, Baltimore had the 124th pick in this draft, and I know a lot of people wanted a corner. We started to see the corner go off the board, though, a little early. Keely Ringo goes and a couple other really solid ones. But the Ravens ended up going with Tavius Robinson, the Ole Miss edge defensive lineman. Very versatile. He can play both inside and outside. He's a big guy. He's listed at 6'7", 245. He's a player that I think, well, depending on where you look, 6'7" or 6'6", regardless, he's a big guy. He's a big player. And I think the enticing thing with Tavius Robinson, again, there's a lot of room to grow here. I would call him, maybe a more on the rawer side of the prospect pool, but that doesn't mean he can't contribute immediately if needed. But the beautiful thing I think with this is you have Tyus Bowser, you have Odafe Owe, and you have David Ajabo. You don't have to have Tavius Robinson step in and play, 80% of snaps all the time. That's something that I don't think you necessarily need to have happen, which I think is really good for a developmental arc for Tavius Robinson. Now, in terms of Robinson, when you look at him as an actual pass rusher, him getting to the quarterback, he has natural athleticism, so he's able to play inside and outside. He also can take multiple tracks. He also has his lateral movement is very well. He has really good counter moves. The length shows up on tape, though. You're able to see him overpower players with his length. And for him, he's an attacker. He attacks the ball. For him, he prioritized that during his time at Ole Miss, ended up having multiple forced fumbles, many of them. And I think for him, that's what we know the Ravens are a team that likes to force turnovers, get the ball out. Marlon Humphrey with his fruit punch, I think that style of play is contagious. And we saw that. What the Ravens have right now, he's a player that fits into that mold. And plus, it feels like the Ravens really valued athletic traits here. It seemed like every one of their picks scored really well on like the RAS stuff, and throughout the combine, they did pretty well. So it seemed like the Ravens continue to value those athletic traits. And for him, the length where, some that, you could say, oh, this will be a sack. It ends up being a forced fumble because he's able to get his arm around it and use that length. So the measurables are there. He's a very good athlete. Also plays with a very high motor. He's a very energetic player as well. He's not necessarily the biggest framed body. He's very tall, but he's leaner in the frame. I think him playing with strength also, the Ravens I think that's coachable though. I think him working with Chuck Smith is going to be really, really, really good. So a lot of people call him like a tweener, finding, the natural position. Eric DeCosta actually compared him to Zadarius Smith. So I think that if he turns into Zadarius Smith, you can sign me up for that one. But I'd say a solid pick. There were some corners on the board I would have been happy with the Ravens taking here, but it seemed like they weren't really in love with this corner class. So Tavius Robinson's the pick, and edge was a need for them. Then we move on to the 5th round, number 157. The Ravens get their corner. They take a guy, Caillou Blue-Kelly, the corner from Stanford. This is a really exciting pick. Again, this draft was so deep, where we saw so many corners go off the board. Again, I don't think the Ravens really necessarily loved this class, but Caillou Blue-Kelly, I think, is a very experienced player, 4-year guy at Stanford. You look at what he was able to bring to the table for Stanford over those 4 years. He ended up having 147 tackles, only 3 interceptions, but had over 20 pass deflections. He's a player that's all around the ball. And I think that's, again, he's the typical Ravens corner, super physical player. He's an athlete. I mean, his father played at USC, and he played for 11 years in the NFL for the Bucks and the Lions. For him, he can play in man coverage. Like, he's a very sticky guy there, but I think he is also good in zone. He's a patient player in terms of when he's up in press. He can punch very well, disrupt the beginning of the route for a receiver. And I think that for what the Ravens need there, again, did they get one of the top corners in the class? No, but they got a sleeper in the class that, again, if the Ravens bring in a veteran, we'll kind of talk about post-draft moves for the Ravens as the show goes on here. Baltimore can end up maybe bringing back Marcus Peters or bringing in Rock Ya-Sin and not having to thrust Caillou Blue-Kelly into a huge role immediately. But I think he can. The 4-year thing in college is huge. He's a 2-year starter at Stanford. And the fact that he has all these traits, I think, is really, really good. The ball production is there. He can play in man. I think he also likes playing in zone. And then his demeanor. He's a physical player, again, like a high motor guy. Missed tackles can be a bit of an issue for him. And I think for him, he projects more. He's an outside guy. There's a ton of upside. He could potentially move into the slot if you need to. But the upside, again, the Ravens took a lot of high upside players that I think can contribute now, though. I think that he fits the Ravens scheme. He's a very scheme-specific player, in my opinion. So I still think it's a very good pick. I liked this in the 5th round. The Ravens seemed very excited about it themselves. They ended up saying that he would have been like a round 2, day 2 player. So they're happy to get him in the 5th, which I think is a very good steal for them. Then we have the mini run, I guess, on offensive linemen. And I think it's interesting for what the Ravens did here in both the 6th and the 7th round. 2 big humans. Again, Caillou Blue-Kelly is a big name. This next name I'm about to read here, those 2 back-to-back, really, you win the name lottery here. Malusala Alimulalu is the guy here. Or no, I said it wrong. It's my first time pronouncing it. Malusale Amivaila Alu. Yeah. So the guy's he's a big guy. He's 6'7". I mean, he's huge, 325. This is a guy who likes to throw people in the dirt, in the ground. And I think the physical play style that he ends up showing is absolutely incredible. And as time goes on, I'm going to be better pronouncing his name. I'll tell you that much. But for him, he's a developmental guy. Like, you see the physical size, you see the strength as well. Like, you see the tools, but those are like the top reasons I think that you want to have him in if you're the Ravens. You see the size, you see the strength, you see the athleticism, him moving out. Projects more as a guard at the NFL level, I would say. I wouldn't necessarily put him Yeah, Bobby, I'm with you, man. That was I literally looked at it for the first time. Bobby Trossett coming in here. I appreciate you, Bobby. If you haven't already, go check out the Ravens Vault. Him and Sarah Ellison do a phenomenal job over there. Daily Ravens coverage like we have over here. But Bobby feels my pain with pronouncing the name of that. But I'm gonna get it. I promise you. We'll have a celebratory stream there. So I appreciate you tuning in here, Bobby. But it's the developmental thing with him, I think, where there is the technique issues. He's not necessarily a super on his feet player. The balanceness is not there too, but he can be light on his feet, which I think is really good. And I think you can project him as a guard. I think you have to move him in, and that to me is fine. Like at the end of the day, the Ravens at guard, like tackle wise, Ronnie Stanley is going to be one of their guys. And then you have Morgan Moses too. Moses, is he a long-term fixture? Probably not. But I think if you kick him into guard, what's the long-term future of Kevin Zeitler? Again, he's not a long-term guy. He's great, but he's not going to be there forever. And then obviously the hole at left guard is at Ben Cleveland. Do you kick Daniel Falele inside? I think these two players the Ravens took, they're going to be able to be some of these guys. And I think the next guy, Andrew Voorhees, I'll just get right to it. The Ravens end up trading. Everybody thought they were done. The Ravens had their press conference and Eric DeCosta talking, John Harbaugh's talking. They were even asked about only having 5 picks and not moving, which is very, very rare for them. And then they go and they trade back. They trade back into the 7th round, 229. They trade a 2024 6th, and they get Andrew Voorhees, the USC offensive lineman. Now, the big thing with Voorhees is he tore his ACL at the scouting combine and ended up doing the bench press anyway. And he racked out 38 reps on the press. And you can guess what that is. That is the most out of any player in the combine. With a torn ACL, he had the brace on, came in on crutches. This is a player that before, it's like the David Ojabo situation. Before the injury was probably a late day 2, early day 3 player. I think in my first ever mock draft I had him mocked to Baltimore in either the 3rd or the 4th round. The Ravens get him in the 7th. He's probably not going to play this year. This is a redshirt year, but he's a physical player. He's a guy, people call him a bull. He's a bull in the run game. His frame is very wide. He has a ton of power, especially in his legs, like the lower body area. I think that to me is super exciting. And Ian Rappaport on NFL Network after the pick was made said that the Ravens were ecstatic. The enticing thing of moving up to get him was really, really key for them. And the fact that they thought he would have been a day 2 or early day 3 pick. Now the Ravens have somebody who can potentially be their starter in 2024, whether it is on the left side or in the right side, depending on what happens with Kevin Zeitler. And he's somebody, again, he's on the older side. Like I think for what prospects are nowadays, he is a bit older, but the foot speed necessarily is somewhat of a weakness. The agility is meh. I'd call it middle of the pack, but his build is great. He's a 6'6" guy, 320. And also, when you look at what he can do with the power, he has such a big radius blocking because he is such a big player. It's almost like he pulls people into him, and then the ability for him to anchor in pass protection. So I thought the Ravens did a very good job here. If I had to give him a grade, I'd give him a B+/A-. I think the Voorhees pick probably moves it up to an A-. I know there were some questions about the Trenton Simpson pick and kind of why the Ravens did that, even though he was the BPA. I know there were a couple of questions about the Tavius Robinson selection as well. But I still think they did a really good job. And Eric DeCosta, I think, got value both positionally in terms of what they needed and also in terms of what they needed for best player available. The Ravens love that. They're never going to go away from it. So still a ton to talk about here on Locked On Ravens. We'll talk about the Ravens undrafted class a little bit, getting to Zay Flowers and Trenton Simpson, Lamar's extension, a lot more to coming up next here on this episode. Live edition, live reaction instant here on Locked On Ravens. But first, this episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. You've heard me talk about this mobile game app a ton. If you ever thought you make a good GM, you have to give this game a try. It's not as easy as you might think to create a dynasty. When you play Ultimate Football GM, you got to control and manage every strategic aspect of the team as you play through seasons and lead your team to glory through trying to build a historic dynasty. And if you want to make your franchise like the Ravens, 6 picks, you can make that happen. You want to sign your quarterback to a long-term extension, sign a star wideout. You can do that all on Ultimate Football GM, and you can make a ton of good or bad decisions. And they can have consequences. Absolutely. And once you download it, you don't even need Wi-Fi to play. You can play with your friends and your family as well. With Ultimate Football GM, you can control the destiny of your franchise by hiring the right coaches and coordinators, managing everything relating to your team, such as injuries, player personnel, issues, and all the ups and downs of a season. All this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is free to playable offline, play on the go as you want and when you want to. Locked On Ravens listeners get 100% previews of their franchise. Use the promo code Locked On in all caps in the game store. That's Locked On in all caps. Make sure to check it out today. Down the games at ultimate-jam.com or look it up on the app stores at ultimate-jam.com. Ultimate Football Jam, start your dynasty today. We're back. Our second segment here of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostreicher still here live with you on this Saturday night. Again, I appreciate everybody spending their Saturday night here with me on Locked On Ravens. You can, again, comment in the chat here live. If you're not here live with us, you're listening to the replay. Turn notifications on YouTube so you know when we go live here. You can also subscribe on YouTube, and these will be available after the fact in audio form if you want to listen there as well. Now, for the Ravens, the draft is over, right? All 7 rounds are done, but that does not mean they are done because undrafted free agency. We know what the Ravens do in undrafted free agency. My all-time favorite Raven was an undrafted free agent. If you can guess who it was, Donnell Ellerbe, throwback name, my all-time favorite guy, always going to be loyal to him. So shout out to Donnell Ellerbe, undrafted guy out of Georgia. A lot of people are very, very excited about what the Ravens have done in undrafted free agency so far. Again, there will be some players that will trickle in after this recording is over because the Ravens have a ton of roster spots. They're going to have a huge undrafted free agent class, but just because that means they're going to do that doesn't mean they aren't going to get solid contributors. I think a lot of people, myself, I'll just tell you who I'm excited about right now, at least from what I know. I'm kind of perusing through Twitter as we're doing this live show, trying to figure it out. Dante Demas Jr., the Maryland wide receiver, and Keaton Mitchell, the ECU running back. Keaton Mitchell, we'll start with him. One of my guys in this draft, an explosive, extremely fast, definitely undersized, but I think to me, I would love to see him make this roster. Like the Ravens, if they keep 4 running backs, and I know right now the locks are definitely J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, and Justice Hill. And I know some people might be hesitant to call Justice Hill a lock, but they signed him into a 2-year deal. I anticipate he stays. Keaton Mitchell, to me, though, is a player that I love. You have the explosiveness factor. He's a factor as a pass catcher, too, which the Ravens have. I think J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards can do it, Justice Hill too, but I think Keaton Mitchell with his speed, with his explosiveness, his home run hitting ability, that to me is very exciting. But Dante Demas, man, I'm excited. I mean, look, a Maryland guy coming in and someone who obviously, again, almost like the Voorhees situation, without the injury, he had an injury and it cut his season short, probably would have been a day 3 pick, probably 4th, 5th round guy. And I was shocked to see Rakeem Jarrett also not get drafted from Maryland, but the Ravens benefit again with Dante Demas. And Demas is someone the Ravens need size in their wide receiver room. They're a team that, you can talk about Odell, Bateman, Flowers. Those are very talented players. They're not necessarily, they can be go up and get it guys, but you don't have a 6'4" player on that roster. Dante Demas Jr. is that guy. I mean, you have Shamar Bridges still. You have a couple of other undrafted players from previous years, but Dante Demas is someone extremely talented player, not afraid to go up there and catch the football. I think that's what a lot of people, like Miles Boykin, for example, right? He was a huge player. He was 6'4", 6'3". He did not play like that. He was scared to get the ball, was never on the same page with Lamar. The Ravens need a receiver who is going to be a big body for them, who can go up there and catch the football. Now, Mark Andrews is a big-bodied receiver, but obviously he's a tight end. I think you need somebody in that receiver room that can do that. So I think that for what the Ravens did in undrafted free agency, at least so far, at least from what I know, they've signed a lot of guys. They've signed tight ends and offensive linemen and defensive linemen. My 2 favorites, the guys who I hope make this roster so far, are Dante Demas and Keaton Mitchell. I mean, imagine a wide receiver room. Let's just run through. I say the Ravens keep 6 wide receivers. Let's say it's Odell Beckham, Rashad Bateman, Zay Flowers, and then Devin Duvernay, Nelson Aguilar, Dante Demas. That's really good. That is really, really good. I would be 100% on board with that. Obviously, with JK in there and Gus Edwards and Mark Andrews and Lamar, you're cooking with grease, as I said on Twitter. And, I forget who, I think Chuck on Twitter. So shout out to Chuck, ended up saying, everybody's using Roquan's vocabulary now. I'm like, yeah, I'm using Roquan's vocabulary. Cooking with grease is what the Ravens will be doing there. Let's get back into the chat a little bit, talk about that. We have, what do we have? A lot of people in the chat. I got to scroll up here. Felix saying, do you think PQ is going to get traded? Seemed like the Ravens were pretty confident that he could fit in with both Trenton Simpson and Roquan Smith. I would still put it at 50-50. I'm not sure how that works out, but yeah, that could be. Ken is saying, what's this craziness I'm hearing? The AB's coming to the Ravens. Is he whacked out of his mind? I don't think AB's coming to the Ravens. The whole thing with AB was yesterday he put a picture on Twitter of him in a Ravens uniform saying, really happy to be back in the NFL, and then put the Ravens flock. And again, people were so happy with what happened with Lamar and what happened with Zay Flowers that nobody cared. Everybody was like, oh, it's Antonio Brown being Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown, I do not think is coming to the Ravens. I'd be 100% shocked. Brandon DeShields checking in saying, I haven't been this happy for EDC since he turned down the Green Bay job. Great job and offseason. It is incredible how much this offseason has turned over the past 48, 72 hours for Baltimore. Lamar gets signed. The pick is Zay Flowers. They have a great rest of the draft. They've killed undrafted free agency so far. It's been really good, not to mention Odell coming in. And Nelson Aguilar, I'm still not a huge fan of the signing. Like, I will be the first to say it, but I think it does look a lot better now. I would have just brought back Demarcus Robinson personally over Aguilar, but again, what can you do? Not every move can be absolutely perfect here, but I agree. I think Garrett DaCosta has definitely turned this offseason around for the Ravens and had a very good draft here. And the Lamar thing, I think, trumps everything, and why I already said that I think Baltimore's the winner of the draft even before it ended. Before the first round was over, I said Baltimore was the winner there. NLNHWS saying Caillou's a really good guy, or Caillou's a guy I really like. I have met him. He's a really cool dude. That's awesome. Yeah, seems like it. He has such a cool video game. The video game concept that kind of went viral a little bit on Twitter, where it's a SEAL team that goes back in time and I guess stops historical events or alters historical events. And I said, can the game go back and stop Tyler Huntley's fumble, or go back and stop Lee Evans from dropping the pass, or Billy Cundiff from missing the field goal? But no, he's a really good player. And apparently here, I'm really excited to see that he's a really cool dude. Seemed like it in his interview. I think, again, Baltimore values the character aspect of that too. Steve checking in saying we do not need Antonio Brown. I agree with Steve 100%. I definitely don't want Antonio Brown there as well. Kenneth talking about corners here, saying need something better than MP. This is a really interesting conversation here with the corner. So we'll pick up what Kenneth had to say in our final segment here on Locked On Ravens. So a lot to talk about. We'll talk about Lamar a bit more, obviously, Zay Flowers a bit more, and what the Ravens could do post-draft, what veterans they could bring in here, and maybe a trade or two with the money they potentially brought in from signing Lamar to that deal. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot to still talk about on Locked On Ravens. But first, this episode is brought to you by Built Bar. And if you're looking for a delicious snack with all the fat and calories and sugar that need the best tasting protein bar ever in Built. And if you're like me, you want to make healthier snack choices, but you don't want to compromise on taste, I've got just the thing for you in Built Bars and Built Puffs. Built Bars are healthy and they taste amazing. They taste so amazing, you won't even think they're that good for you. What makes Built Bars so good is for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate, and they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and cookies and cream. You also have only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, with a whopping 17 grams of protein. Now you don't even need to wait to get a box. For years I've been talking about ordering Built at Built.com, but now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. While you can still get your specialty flavors over at Built.com. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today. Walk to the pharmacy section and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream bar, double chocolate bar, or coconut puff. And if you're close to a Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with hip flavors such as brownie batter puff and churro puff. You can thank me later. We're back here rounding out Locked On Ravens, our live instant reaction edition of the draft. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this show. Again, thank you so much here for tuning in on a Saturday night, as I've said, because it means a lot. It really does. We've done a ton of draft coverage here on Locked On Ravens. We've talked about day 1, day 2, obviously here day 3, Lamar Jackson. We've done a ton. This is my 4th live stream in 3 days. It's been crazy. I did a live show. I've been writing articles over at Ravens Wire. It's been exhausting, but it's been amazing to kind of see everything here that I've been able to really build here over almost 4 years. And I couldn't do it without everybody here who has supported me and listened to me. So I really, really, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate everybody here tuning in and listening, and it makes it all worth it. It's a lot of work, but it's been amazing to build this here. So let's get back. Enough of the sappiness. Let's get back into our draft conversation. We'll pick up here from what Kenneth said with the corners. We need something better than MP. The Ravens take Kyle Blue Kelly, but again, where do they kind of fit in with what the Ravens need corner-wise? It's Marlon Humphrey, it's Kyle Blue Kelly, it's Brandon Stevens, Trayvon Mullen, Pepe Williams, Jalen Davis. I think they do need to bring in people. Eric DaCosta kind of hinted at the fact that, some moves will probably be made. I would anticipate either Marcus Peters being brought back or Rock Ya-Sin being brought in. Maybe they bring in Adrian Amos. I know he's more of a safety player, but I know they visited with him in the offseason as well. So I think corner-wise for the Ravens, if they can bring in Rock Ya-Sin or bring back Marcus Peters, I think they're in a pretty good spot there. Now, again, kind of saying they need something better than MP. Marcus Peters had a really tough year last year. Coming off the ACL injury, was not the Marcus Peters I think we all knew, especially, time in Baltimore, time in Los Angeles, time in Kansas City. But at the same time, there is bounce back potential from him. There's also the potential that he's just not the same player anymore. I 100% acknowledge that. But at the same time, if it's him and Rock Ya-Sin, the corner room gets a little crowded because realistically the Ravens probably keep 7 corners at an absolute maximum. That's absolute. I don't think they do, honestly. I think they probably keep 6. And then let's just say it's both. It's Marlon Humphrey, Rock Ya-Sin, Marcus Peters, Kyle Blue Kelly, Brandon Stevens, and then, your last guy. Is it Jalen Davis? Is it Pepe Williams? I don't know who it would be then. So the Ravens are going to have some really tough roster decisions to make. I think that with the selection of Kyle Blue Kelly, the Ravens will bring in one. So I think it will be either Rock Ya-Sin or Marcus Peters or somebody else. Or if anybody has any other chat, if you want to put in the chat who you feel like the Ravens could go after, I'll read it out here. We can talk about it. Dollhouse narration saying, I think this year's team will be complete, even on special teams, especially if we can stay healthy. And that's what it is, Dollhouse. I agree with you. It's all about health, though. You can look back. I always go back to the Bengals Super Bowl year 2 years ago when the 4 teams still in the conference championship. It was Bengals, Chiefs, 49ers, and Rams. Those 4 teams, I think, were the healthiest teams in the league, or at least up there in terms of healthiest. The Bengals had no injuries that year. They had none, and they made the Super Bowl. All of this is about health, a lot of it. You can win a Super Bowl without health, but it's a really, really big factor. So I think with Steve Saunders gone, I think that's a weight off of a lot of people's shoulders, especially a lot of people listening here tonight, I'm sure. But the Ravens need to have the health gods, the injury football gods, bless them with a healthy season here as well. Eric Johnson saying PQ is still going to be gone. Maybe that's what happens. I don't know what their plan is. I think that with Trenton Simpson coming in, definitely complicates things. I personally don't think Patrick Queen has a long-term future in Baltimore. I think he's going to have a very good NFL career. I just think with the Simpson pick and with the Roquan Smith extension, you just can't pay him, especially when he's going to be up. And I think Lamar's contract will start to really have a hit those years. So I would love to see Smith and Queen play alongside each other for many years, even put Simpson in that equation. Mike McDonald has a lot more, like a ton of chess pieces to work with now, but I just unfortunately don't see a long-term future for Patrick Queen in Baltimore. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is some way it can work, but I think there's definitely a chance he stays this year. When you talk about after this year, I think that gets a lot more iffy though. So Baltimore get up saying, man, if you're going to get an undrafted corner, at least go get an upside guy. Jeremy Lucien has no upside, ran a 4.7 as a corner. I didn't even know they signed him. Again, I've been trying to peruse Twitter here and trying to look at that. I think just because, 4.7 as a corner is not great. I'm sure that's why he fell out of the draft. But the Ravens kind of have a knack for finding these guys. And I don't even he might be a practice squad developmental guy. I don't think they have any room in their cornerback room for undrafted guys at this point if they go out there and get like Marcus Peters or Rock Ya-Sin. So thank you for keeping me up on the undrafted news, Baltimore Get Up, because it's been a whirlwind for me here. Kenneth also saying, what are they going to do with Tariq Black? Practice squad potentially. I just don't think he makes the roster at this point. He could be a very solid practice squad player for them if he shines in the preseason, especially. But I just don't think there's any room here right now. And then we have a couple of Nolan saying, had that game before it was anything, had it 2 years ago. Oh, if it's Ultimate Football GM we're talking about, Nolan, hey, shout out to you, man. I appreciate you putting in the Ultimate Football GM plug in there. John saying, fellas, can we just call him L-O-U or L-A-U. I think they're with the name pronunciation. I'm not going to say it again because I'm going to embarrass myself, but I'm going to get it right. Look, in me, I should know with the Ostriker last name how important it is to pronounce those names correctly. So I'm going to be on it, I promise here. Dollhouse saying Keaton Mitchell, shouting out Keaton Mitchell here, saying he's different. Imagine him and Zay on the field at the same time. That's explosiveness right there, man. I'm telling you. I love Keaton Mitchell. I'm really rooting for him and Dante Demas to make this roster. Dollhouse saying Mitchell can do the kick return and punt return. Yeah, possibly if Devin Duvernay isn't in the fold here. I know there's been a lot of speculation concerning maybe Duvernay's future in Baltimore. You now have a guy who can do that too. But kind of to the point here, I want to raise this question. Why we need more running backs? Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins are good. Plus we have Hill also. And I mean, I agree. Like, I think that Keaton Mitchell, if he doesn't make the roster, key practice squad guy, in my opinion. There is going to be the conversation. We'll have it here throughout the next couple of months on the show, so be sure to keep it here on Locked On Ravens for those next couple of months. We're year-round, by the way, just a little plug in there. But we're going to have the conversation. How many running backs should the Ravens keep? How many wide receivers? How many corners? How many quarterbacks? We're going to have those conversations. And to me, I think that, look, if I'm being realistic, I really want to say 4 running backs. But, yeah, I think it's going to be 3. And then Keaton Mitchell maybe is the practice squad guy. But I do love him. I love Keaton Mitchell so much. He was one of my guys. I'm really excited they got him. So, yeah, at that point. And then Jay Reiser, 15, saying, long as Rock Ya-Sin and Marcus Peters get signed, the corner room will be good to go. Yeah, both are one of them. I think even one of them at this point, you're okay. It's not necessarily a strength of the team, but you have Humphrey, you have Ya-Sin. And then if Kai Blue Kelly's your 3 and Stevens is your 4, you have Trayvon Mullen there too. I think a lot of people they're kind of overlooking the Mullen signing. He was decent in his first 2 years with the Raiders. I think injuries, other stuff kind of got in the way of that. I'm not going to say bank the future on Trayvon Mullen. I do think he's a solid player, though, and hopefully Pepe Williams can step up as maybe a guy in the slot. You maybe can put Kyle Hamilton there. Yeah, you can even put Trenton Simpson there if you want to at this point. Positionless defense is what the Ravens are going with here. Kenneth saying maybe with Rock Ya-Sin and MP could be good, but MP has to redo his contract. But Marcus Peters is a free agent. So I think if you're looking at a contract for Marcus Peters, it would be not a veteran minimum, but maybe a 1 or 2 year deal, $4 or $5 million per season. I think that would be solid for him. And then Rock Ya-Sin maybe a little bit more, like a tad bit more than that here. But let's recap a little bit about what actually happened for the rest of the draft here. The Ravens, obviously on draft day, they signed Lamar Jackson to that 5-year, $260, $185 guaranteed mega deal, lifted the weight off of everybody's shoulders. I was so happy. A lot of people were so happy. And it was cool, again, I've said this, to kind of watch it happen in real time. I think Jamison Hensley put out the tweet at like 3:45 about, oh, good news coming for the Ravens. And everyone's like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Then it slowly started to trickle in that, Lamar could be signing something, Lamar. And then the DeAndre Hopkins factor on top of that, everybody was like, oh my God, like this is the best day in Ravens history. It still was, I think. It was one of the best days in Ravens history. But to have that weight lifted off of everybody's shoulders, to now know that Lamar is going to be the quarterback. As he said, a whole lot of flock going on for the next 5 years. I think it's a good deal for the Ravens. It's a good deal for Lamar. I'm super happy for Lamar, happy for the Ravens. And look, I give him credit again. I think things would have gone smoother without an agent, but he got it done without an agent. He had his team. He got I'd say quote unquote advice. I don't think it was very good advice from the NFLPA, but Lamar and his team, they got the deal done without an agent, and shout out to him for doing it. So now you have your franchise guy locked in, obviously a polarizing player there, so I'm super excited for that. And then on draft night, the Ravens taking Zay Flowers, super explosive player, explosive route runner. You pair him in with Rashad Bateman and Odell Beckham Jr. That's one heck of a receiving trio there. I know the DeAndre Hopkins stuff was exciting. I really wanted him. I really, really did want him. But at the end of the day, it ends up being Zay Flowers. I think it's fine. I mean, Flowers is somebody super competitive guy, plays with a chip on his shoulder, and, just really wants to be in Baltimore. He was already repping Lamar Jackson at, I think it was his draft party. So I was excited about that pick. And then day 2 of the draft comes. The Ravens do not have a second round pick. They make my night by putting out the Roquan Smith tweet, which I had called with Jake Luke on this show, where it was, we like our second round pick in Roquan Smith. And I was like, yes, yes, they did it. But then they take Trenton Simpson, who was the Clemson linebacker, 3rd round, number 86. There were really good corners on the board. Keeler Ringo, Darius Rush, Eli Ricks, et cetera, et cetera. But for now, Simpson is somebody who I think cloudies the future of Patrick Queen, but he's a do-it-all player, he's literally all over the field. If you're talking about what the Ravens want to do in terms of their positionless defense, Kyle Hamilton can move all over the field. Chuck Clark, who they traded, was able to move all over the field. This is a pick to me where he's going to play, and he's going to play a lot. You can experiment with him on the edge. You can put him in line if you want to. He's a very explosive, very fluid athlete. Him and Zay Flowers actually have pretty similar splits, which I think tells you what kind of athlete he is. I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of the pick, but I do think it was solid. Again, BPA for them, and I think Eric DeCosta provided pretty solid insight into what the pick was for them, saying that in the third round, they had maybe 7 or 8 guys on their board at the start, and then by the end, they only had 1, and it was Trent Simpson, and they made that pick. So, again, the Ravens are a BPA team. That's in their DNA. They're not going to go away from that. For me, I think that with that all in mind, being able to take a guy like a Trenton Simpson and put him on that defense, Mike McDonald's going to have one heck of a year with all these guys there, being able to move all these chess pieces he can move around. So I'm super excited for what the Ravens can do this season. Definitely, we ain't done yet, as Marcus Peters says. Job's not finished, as Kobe said. So we got to have a lot still to come here for the Ravens. But we're covering it all here on the show on Locked On Ravens. That's all I have for you here tonight on the show. I got a Nuggets game to watch. I got to get out of here. I'm a Nuggets fan. They play the Suns right now, so I'm going to head out and watch that, and also be sure to put this in audio form as well as write for Ravens Wire, so you can check out all the written content over there. When we get back here, again, thank you everybody for subscribing here, tuning into the draft coverage. We'll be back here on Monday with our 6 a.m. show, talking about the Ravens, talking about their draft class, continuing to recap the entire thing here. I appreciate everybody. Thank you so much again. I'll see you right back here on Monday on Locked On Ravens.